Hello, everybody, and welcome to this all-new episode of the Fairfax Sports Report. It's our football preview blowout special, gentlemen. That's right. I'm your host, BJ Kubarulis, alongside of starting from the far side over there, Dave Bushenfeld from the Times Papers, and Paul Frummel of the Connection newspapers. One guy on here that is actually not a writer, but he's probably smarter than all of us when it comes to Northern Region football. Not probably, is smarter than all of us when it comes to Northern Region football, is Mike Glennon of Westfield, the quarterback over at Westfield High School. Mike's going to be joining us for the first part of this football preview blowout to share his expertise about the upcoming playoff schedule. But before we get to that, let's thank the folks that make this show possible. Of course, we're talking about our teammates at CCI Screen Printing. For all your screen printing needs, 703-978-0257. Hey, check us out on the web, fairfaxsportsnetwork.com. And on the website, you'll be able to read stories about Westfield and what they've been able to do all year, including a recent feature on Johnny Pickett, which Mike had a lot of good things to say about one of his favorite receivers. And with Johnny, they've been able to break into the playoffs. Let's show the folks at home exactly what the playoff standings are, if you will. We'll jump right into the Division 6 PowerPoints. Shows you Westfield right up at the top, followed by Chantilly. These are the top two teams in the Northern Region when it comes to PowerPoints in the Division 6 standings, guys. Check those out. Dave, seeing Westfield, no surprise that they're right up at the top there with 33 PowerPoints.
They've been at the top all year, followed by Chantilly. Then West Springfield sneaks in at number 3. Lake Braddock sitting at number 4 thanks to West Potomac's loss to T.C. Williams in the final week of the season. West Potomac falls to number 5, followed by Centerville, Robinson, and South County. The Stallions making it in by 1/10 of a point ahead of Langley.
All right, let's jump right into Division 5 as well. We'll show you the matchups in just a minute, but for now, Paul Frummel, Stonebridge, has been rolling teams in the Division 5.
Right at the top of Division 5, you have the two best teams in the Liberty District. Stonebridge right there at 31.7, and Madison right behind him at 29 points. Thomas Edison's right there, 28.8, and Marshall, another Liberty District team, fourth at 25.8.
You see Mount Vernon, and not far behind is Yorktown, and they're going to be facing off with Edison. When we get a chance to break down our Division 5 games, you'll see that that's one of the several rematches from earlier in the regular season. South Lakes jumping in, and Lee there, Washington and Lee missing the playoffs by 0.2 of a point, guys. Let's jump into the matchups quickly. In the Division 6, you'll see Westfield. Mike's going to tell us all about this matchup with South County. He says South County's gotten a lot better since the last time these two teams met. Chantilly and Robinson. Centerville and West Springfield, a lot of people picking that one as a potential upset. And West Potomac and Lake Braddock, that one, the 4 and 5 matchup, always interesting. That one could go either way. In Division 5, Lee is going to travel to Big Dog Stonebridge. South Lakes will be at Madison. Madison losing an enigma of a game, guys, to Marshall, but they're still at the number 2 seed. Got to wonder if maybe they were just resting some guys in that game. Edison and Yorktown again, and Mount Vernon and Marshall. Marshall sneaks into the playoffs. They missed it by a hair last year, but here they are in the playoffs this year for the first time in quite a long time. Not a stranger to the playoffs, though, is Mr. Mike Glennon. Mike, heading into the playoffs, what's the one thing that Westfield needs to do to stay level-headed, going into what seems to be kind of maybe a trap game, some would call it, against an 8th seed?
Well, I say since day one we've been the main target across the Northern Region. I mean, every team wants to beat us, and we know that we just have to stay focused. I mean, we've had some big wins, but we've also come close against a team like Chantilly, and to beat a team like South County, we're going to need to play our best, and ultimately we want to make it to the state championship, so we just have to take one game at a time. All
right, and one game at a time, Mike. You've put up some great numbers this year. Let's show the folks at home exactly what Mike Glennon's been able to do this year in leading Westfield to a perfect start. 10-0, 6-0 in the Concord District through 10 games, over 1,700 yards passing, 23 touchdowns. We had to put them up there, the 4 INTs, but that's just part of the game. You know that. Only 4 picks. That's not bad, Mike. And you rushed 18 times for 79 yards and 4 touchdowns rushing. What's that all about? This guy starts running on the field. That just makes him pretty hard to stop. Paul, you got a chance to see Mike run a little bit this year, something he's added to his game.
Definitely, Mike. Talk me through him improving that running game, getting those 4 touchdowns. I mean, what's that like for you? Big 6'6" frame running down the field. How does that like? How do you like that?
I mean, I think it's a change for most people. Don't expect me to run the ball, but I mean, I actually have improved. I don't think I'm all that slow. I mean, I might look slow, but I just because I got the long legs and I mean, I worked hard in the offseason to improve my speed, and I know that at the college level, I'm going to need to get even faster. So, I mean, it's high school football, and I think I'm just as fast as most of the guys I'm going against.
And let's take a look at Westfield again with their defense and their offense production this year. You see Westfield, they've scored 368 points. And points per game, that's 36 points per game in 10 games during the regular season. Now, points against, they've only allowed 43 points, and that's first in the Northern region. 4.3 points allowed average, and the defense has had 5 shutouts this year.
Yeah, Mike, Westfield is well known for the high-powered offense that you guys have. Talk about the defense and what a great job they've done for you this year.
I mean, just everyone on the defense has improved dramatically throughout the course of the season. I mean, in the beginning of the season, I was actually surprised because they gave us a good fight during practice, and our defensive line, I think, is by far the best in the region. I mean, we have a good offensive line, and sometimes it's tough to block them. And then, obviously, our linebackers are great, Mike King, Cole Campbell, and Brian Kennedy. And then our secondary hasn't been tested as much, but we haven't allowed one passing touchdown the whole year. So going against our offense in practice and our offense going against their defense, I think has made us a much better football team.
You mentioned the defensive line. It's one thing that I heard a lot, especially after the Centerville game. Coach Urbanek told me that they have like 6 or 7 defensive linemen rotate in to get that rest. That shows that depth. Talk a bit more about that defensive line and what it's done for this defense.
Well, I mean, our coaches do a great job of knowing when to put people in, and defense line is by far our deepest position. I mean, we probably have about 8 seniors that can really probably would be starting at any other team in the region. So they just do a great job, and we have some good pass rushers, some good run stoppers. So all around, we just have a very solid defensive line, and that anchors the whole defense.
Mike, last year you lost one of your receivers, Crutchko, in a big injury. I was actually at that game at Langley, and I remember that game, and I remember him going down. I remember the sideline, kind of everybody kneeling down and just kind of really feeling for him. But when one guy goes down, another guy rises to the occasion. There was an article on Fairfax Sports Network. You got a chance to talk with one of our writers about that. Johnny Pickett came in that game, scored a touchdown, and ever since then, he's been one of your favorite targets. Talk a little bit about some of your targets and some of your receivers.
Well, Johnny obviously is probably one of the fastest receivers in the northern region, and he's done a great job. I mean, both him and David, by far the best hands I've seen in high school football. They don't drop anything. I don't know if they drop more than one pass this whole year. And then Johnny brings the speed, but then like against Centerville, they try to double him, and that's when David Crutchko and Randy Johns come into play. David's done a great job fighting back. I mean, that injury was just awful, and I really didn't know if he would ever be able to play to full potential, but he's fought back and done a great job. And then also Randy Johns, who played JV last year because he took the year off his sophomore year, has really done a good job. I mean, he's got athletic ability that's hard to stop, and hopefully we'll continue having success through there.
Speaking of Johnny, talk about that 76-yard touchdown pass, first play of the game against Centerville. Talk about how that play came about and how you guys decided to take that strike in the first play.
Well, I think being Centerville, coming off a big win against Chantilly, they had a lot of momentum in their way. So we just wanted to kind of stick it to them right away and let them know that we were ready to play. And Johnny I threw a pretty good ball, but Johnny just made it happen. I mean, he beat his guy deep, and
one-on-one coverage.
yeah, it just shows what kind of speed he has.
Now, the Westfield Bulldogs finished the season at 10-0, 6-0 in the Concord District, facing up against South County in the first round of the playoffs. They met in the first game of the season, a 45-6 win for Westfield. Let's take a look at the numbers as these teams match up. And South County, as you can see, finished at 6-4, 5-2 in the Patriot District, had 26.9 power points, scored 245 points, but allowed 248. Got to watch on their team is Titus Pennington, the running back. And then for Westfield, obviously the player to watch right here next to us, Mike Glennon. Talk about heading into that game, what you guys need to do to get the win.
I mean, like you said, they very much improved their offense. That Titus Pennington, I don't know if he's playing quarterback or running back. I know they switched something there. And they've had a very good offense as of recently. And then their defense, they try to move around a lot, try to confuse our offense. And, I mean, it should be a better game than most people expect. And, I mean, this is the first time they've ever made the playoffs, so they're going to be wanting to knock off Westfield, the #1 team in the region.
You are the #1 team in the region, and you guys carry yourselves that way. And it's been a winning culture over there under Coach Tom Verbanek. But you've had a more experience with Westfield, being that your older brother played there. You were there watching him win some games. You have the opportunity, though, to win more games in your senior year because they've added some into the playoffs. Talk a little bit about that. Are you and Sean a little bit competitive?
I mean, we're always competitive in everything we do. I mean, from stats to video games to anything. I mean, we compete in every way. And, I mean, if we go 15-0, he always says that whenever I get an award, he says, well, win a state championship and then come talk to me. But if we win a state championship, I'm going to say I was 15-0, you were 14-0. So, but first we got to take one game at a time and get to that point.
Westfield is one of the teams that is favored to win the Division VI state title. So Mike will be calling Sean and saying, hey, I'm ready to talk to you now. I won my state title. And the Fairfax Sports Network will be there every step of the way to follow Mike Glennon and the Westfield Bulldogs. I want to thank you, Mike, for joining us here on the Fairfax Sports Report. When we come back, Monica Moore is going to join us for her weekly volleyball report to show us her rankings just as we head into the postseason in volleyball. Come on back for more here on the Fairfax Sports Report. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Fairfax Sports Report. I'm your host, BJ Kubarulis, alongside of Monica Moore here. Monica, you know the drill. Take it away and drop some volleyball knowledge.
All right, well, a lot to talk about this week in the Northern Region for volleyball, with all 4 of the district tournament finals taking place last week. And then, of course, the Northern Region tournament already started up this week. But before we talk about all the latest news and results from the Northern Region tournament, let's take a look at what my rankings looked like at the beginning of the week. And as you can see, still at the top, Langley, the newly crowned Liberty District Tournament champions with their record of 17-1. Their last loss, of course, and their only loss coming on October 1st to Westfield. Since then, they have been perfect. At the #2 spot, Centerville, the Concord District Tournament champions, and followed by them is Chantilly. They, of course, had that big win against Westfield last week in the Concord District Tournament, and then they lost to Centerville in the finals. In the 4th place position is Westfield. They have fallen off a little bit in the past few weeks. And then coming in the 5th place position is Fairfax, another team from the Concord District. And as I said, the district tournament champions, those championships took place last week. The Concord champion is Centerville, Liberty is Langley, Patriot District is West Springfield, and the national district champion is Edison. All right, but of course, the Northern Region Volleyball Tournament already started up, and tomorrow night, 2 big games. And the first game is Centerville against Langley, and those are the 2 top teams in the Northern Region. That's going to be a fantastic game. They squared off earlier in the season, and Langley came out on top 3-2, even though that game was a nail-biter. Look for Langley to do the same tomorrow night. And in the second game will be Chantilly squaring off against Stonebridge. And I cannot say enough good things about that young Chantilly team. They only have 2 seniors, 7 sophomores, but one of their seniors, their libero, Vicky Chung, is outstanding, and I would look for them to win. All right, and on Saturday, the Northern Region Championship will be held, and we will be there covering it. Thanks, BJ.
All right, more volleyball action coming your way every week from Monica Moore here on the Fairfax Sports Report. Let's kick it to Nick Ashew, George Mason Patriot Insider. You can check out Nick's Patriot Insider every week at fairfaxsportsnetwork.com.
With November 9th creeping closer, the last thing on our agenda to get ready for the season is to take a deeper look into just how well the Patriots match up with their biggest competition in the CAA. I'm Nick Ashew, as usual, with the Patriot Insider for FSN. The first team that has to be watched is, of course, the defending champions of the CAA, Virginia Commonwealth. A team with 10 underclassmen, including 7 freshmen, looks to be in a very similar situation that Mason experienced just last year. Losing multiple starters and having such a young team, along with having only 2 players over 6'7", gives the Patriots a size and experience advantage over the Rams. But VCU does have their most important player, returning in CAA preseason Player of the Year, Eric Maynard. Maynard literally stole the Colonial title away from the Patriots last March and single-handedly led VCU to their first-round upset over Duke. This team has a much different look now, but head coach Anthony Grant still knows just how to bring out the best in the Rams.
So to me, it's just a matter of preparing our team and guys in a position where they can do what they do best.
Mason needs to give a heavy dose of Will Thomas and Daryl Monroe inside to really be successful. Old Dominion has a great senior backcourt with Brian Henderson and Brandon Johnson, but their secret weapon is 7'3" center Sam Harris. The Australian giant may not be much on offense, but his ability to cast a shadow over the rim will be tough for any Patriot trying to get to the basket. This, of course, puts more responsibility on Mason's outside shooting for there to be success against the Monarchs. Now, Drexel is a team that tends to be overlooked around the CAA. Many felt they were more deserving of an NCAA tournament invite than ODU last year. Despite all that, the core of their roster returns, most notably center Frank Eligar, a 6'9 senior that has a wingspan like an eagle and low post scoring to go right along with his defense. The preseason CAA first-teamer is by far the most talented player for the Dragons, but junior Scott Rogers adds a nice complement in the backcourt as well. The best thing here is for the Patriots to keep Eligar double-teamed and force Drexel to make outside shots where they were just an average 33% last season. Finally, the most important team to keep an eye on is, of course, Hofstra.
We're bigger and we're deeper than we've ever been. So I have to look at the bright side. Having lost Stokes and Rivera, I could cry myself to sleep at night, and I'm sure I will once the games start a couple times. But I'm excited. We got a good bunch of kids.
That was Hofstra head coach Tom Pecora.
We lose 3,000 points and probably 1,000 rebounds and assists. So there's going to be a transition period with it, but I think our depth in the front court hopefully will balance that out.
Yes, they lost 2 explosive scorers, but Antoine Agudio and his 20 points a game are still there, not to mention 8 upperclassmen, which can bring them about as close to matching the experience that Mason has to offer as any team in the conference. Key here, Mason actually making their free throws in a close game and not letting leads slip away like last season. Hofstra seemed to have their number in 2006, but Will Thomas and Daryl Monroe got the best of the Pride last March, something they hope will translate into a trend this season. The rest of the CAA has some talent to offer as well, but nothing like those top 5. Look at the bottom 7 teams as the spoilers of the CAA this year. The final week of previews is in the books. Now comes the real thing. November 9th is Mason's opener, the first time we get to see what this team really has to offer. I'm Nick Ashew in the Patriot Insider for Fairfax Sports Network.
Welcome back to the Fairfax Sports Report. We took a quick break for some volleyball action and some basketball action, and we're going to jump right back into our football preview blowout. But before we do that, a quick news and note tip from Dave Buchenfeld, who's got something to report from this week's Northern Region meeting.
Yeah, well, we went to the Northern Region meeting this afternoon, and basically they decided nothing. They do not want to have the 2 schools from Loudoun in, but they're going down to the VHSL meeting in a couple weeks, and if they decide to throw them in there, they'll have to scramble around to figure out where they're going, kind of like what happened with Stonebridge and Loudoun Valley. But basically, there is nothing new to report.
All right, but there is some news to report, Dave, about a South Lakes football player. You've got a nugget to share about A.J. Price.
That's true. A.J. Price, wide receiver for South County, got a scholarship offer from Michigan. He's still mulling it over, but full ride to Michigan is a pretty good thing.
And this is for a guy that just started playing high school football for South Lakes last year as a junior. He's got a great quarterback this year in Scott Reed, who is the catcher for the baseball team. He's got a heck of an arm, and they're obviously been hooking up for a great season. Michigan swoops in at the last minute just before this kid's about to graduate. Yep. A.J. Price could potentially be going to Michigan. We'll keep you posted on that. But for now, let's get to our FSN comment of the week. Wesley Doles had a bit of a little love to dole out to the Edison Eagles. Edison is the truth, and everyone will see after tomorrow night, mark my words. This was Wesley Doles, number 34's remarks about last week's matchup between Chantilly and Edison. And the only thing that is true about Wesley's remark is that it's false.
Hey, well,
Edison was not the truth. Though, Paul, they did come close to upsetting Chantilly.
He didn't say they were going to win. He just said they were the truth. And taking that, they did have they were down 21-0, but they came back, Van Barb, with 2 late touchdowns. So, hey, they're a good team, 21-14 with Chantilly,
Do you want us to talk about your comment of the week? Go to fairfaxsportsnetwork.com. Leave your comments. We'll bring them up. And you know what? If you make a false prediction, we're gonna make you hear about it here on the Fairfax Sports Report. Guys, let's jump right into the Division 6 breakdown. We'll show you the matchups. We've done it once before, but let's jump into it heavily now. John Marcario joining us on set now from the Connection newspapers. John, the Division 6 playoffs are as follows.
South County will travel to Westfield to play the Bulldogs. South County lost to them earlier this season. Then you have Robinson traveling to Chantilly. The Chargers beat Robinson earlier this year. Then you have a unique matchup, Centerville and West Springfield. First time those 2 teams will play this season. And then your final matchup, the number 5 seed West Potomac Wolverines at the number 4 seed, the Lake Braddock Bruins. Lake Braddock dominated West Potomac earlier this season in their previous game.
All right, and for the Division 6 playoffs, we are going to break down every single game for Division 6. Next week, we'll be heavily jumping into Division 5. But for this episode, let's stick with Division 6. Paul Frummelt, two teams you're very familiar with, Robinson and Chantilly. This one, a rematch of an earlier Chantilly win this season.
Yeah, Chantilly easily beat Robinson early in the year, although Robinson did have, as Coach Lally told me, 4 big plays against the Chargers defense. 3 of them were for a touchdown. So Coach Lally is very worried about the Robinson Rams. You see the breakdown of Robinson. They're 5-5. Pretty surprising. 2-4 in the Concord District. Surprising for the usually very strong Robinson Rams. They had a point PPT rating of 27. Points for, 190. Points against, 182. And the player to watch, obviously, is Tim Meyer. They're a great quarterback.
And you see Robinson's offense is scoring just a shade over of what its defense is allowing, and that's never a good combination. At 5-5, though, Robinson, a 7 seed in the playoff, jumps into the playoffs when it was in doubt if they'd even make it against a team in Chantilly, Dave, that you got a chance to watch in the state finals last year. Chantilly, a team with a 31-point power rating. That's a scary team.
Yep, they've scored 322 points this year. It's all about the running game with them. Austin Decker, Torian Pace, Antonio Cross, and Bugsy Uricha combined for over 3,000 yards rushing this year. So if you can't stop them, you can't stop Chantilly. Note on Robinson, though, Timmy Meyer has been playing a lot better lately. He was a little maligned at the beginning of the season, but he's thrown for over 100 yards in 4 of the last 5 games, balancing out their strong rushing attack. So that's good for them on offense.
I saw Timmy Meyer show a lot of experience against Centerville earlier in the year, driving him late for a touchdown drive to win the game. So he definitely has that killer instinct that you need in your quarterback.
All right, and speaking of quarterbacks, 2 great ones got a chance to meet up in the FSN Game of the Week. Edison's Ben Barber and Austin Decker from Chantilly in the Fairfax Sports Network's Game of the Week. Let's get to the highlights and show the folks at home what exactly this Chantilly team is capable of, but you see some special teams work there, guys, in the early goings.
Special teams play just killed Edison early going. I was talking to head coach Vaughn Lewis earlier in the week, and he just said their punter had some problems in the beginning that put him in an early hole. Here you see a touchdown pass. Decker, wide open receiver in the end zone.
Right to his tight end there. And Decker can use his arm when he needs to. They run a lot, but Decker can use his arm and find an open receiver.
That pass off his back foot and some beautiful footwork in the end zone by the tight end. You see Ben Barber, who's got a chance to play some quarterback this year. He's really a true wide receiver, but he's also gotten it done just like he is here on the ground. This guy's hard to stop.
Well, Coach Lally said that they were trying to have Ben Barber beat them with his arm. Keep Ben Barber inside, bend and not break, so Lally said. They bent, they did not break.
All right, and Chantilly falling on top of one there, and the Chargers with the punt. Special teams just wouldn't go Edison's way. You see that one hit off an Edison Eagle. Can Chantilly recover? The official says yes. Chargers then looking to break into the end zone. And the running game for Chantilly has been fantastic this year, guys.
Oh, that option attack. Teams are still confused by it. You see, if you have a running back like Torian Pace who can break tackles like this, you're going to have a good running game.
You see him get to the corner, Dave. He's hard to stop when he does. He's so explosive to the outside. Another punt here for the Eagles. And this one going to be, looks like he's just going to hand that one off to the official, and they're just going to, okay, that's going to end the highlights for us as Chantilly walks off victoriously. The Chargers, not too convincing, though, in this win, John Marcario. You thought Edison had a chance in this one.
Edison had a chance, just 5 turnovers, absolutely destroyed the Eagles' chances on that one. 3 turnovers that they had in the first 6 minutes of the game just put them down 21-0. That Edison offense is very good. They're just not built to fall behind 21-0, especially against a very good Chantilly defense. Cause for concern for the Chargers, though. They scored 6 points against Centerville 2 weeks ago and needed 3 turnovers inside of Edison's 30-yard line to put up 21 points. Other than that, they did nothing. So their offense is slow going into the playoffs, which is not a good sign.
Okay, guys, let's run through this one real quick and say who we think is going to take it. Dave, are you going to go with Robinson or an experienced Chantilly team?
I think Chantilly has the edge in this one.
John?
Robinson.
Chantilly, it's no question.
Yeah, I think Robinson has the experience in Mark Bendorf, who's been there many years. Of course, they missed the playoffs last year for the first time since '98. Here they are back. I just think they're too young and inexperienced in their secondary to hang with Austin Decker, an experienced quarterback who's been to the state tournament before, state title game. I think that he's a guy that's going to be able to put up some big numbers in the air against a team that's had a rough time in their secondary. Guys, let's jump into the next matchup, which is one that a lot of people are picking as Well, Dave, let's call a spade a spade. An upset. Everyone thinks that Centerville is going to be able to take out West Springfield, which has kind of a weak defense.
Well, this is definitely the most intriguing matchup of the four in Division 6. You have one of the best offenses in the region against one of the best defenses in the region. West Springfield, the fourth best scoring offense in the region with 36.7 points per game. Centerville, on the other hand, the second best scoring defense behind Westfield, allowed only 82 points all year long. It's going to be very interesting to see which one wins out. West Springfield has Offensive Player of the Year in the Patriot District and Bryn Renner, the quarterback, threw for 2,031 yards and 23 touchdowns. They also have the biggest rusher in the region, Brandon Bailey, ran for 1,328 yards and 13 touchdowns in only 9 games. He missed one with an injury. So it's going to be really interesting to see if Centerville can slow down their offense.
Guys, when you look at Centerville, it's a team that has allowed just 82 points this year against one of the most highly offensive-powered juggernauts in the region in West Springfield. And, of course, West Springfield going to be at home for this one as they're the higher seed on that turf. I think West Springfield, I think they've got a shot in this, and it's weird to say that because they are the higher seed, but I truly believe that Centerville is a team that's coming out of a stronger district that has seen tougher tests. Look, they took out Chantilly. That is not an easy thing to do, and I think defense wins championships, guys.
Most definitely. Their offense has struggled at times. It has had some problems, but this defense is outstanding. Like you said, second best only behind Westfield. If they can shut down West Springfield and stop their offense, get a few turnovers, be opportunistic on offense, they can definitely take this game.
John?
That's true, but you're asking a Centerville offense to do something that they haven't done all season long. I mean, West Springfield's defense is a little bit weak. Their numbers look better than they were last year. They still are very susceptible to the big play against Robert E. Lee, who doesn't have a good offense to begin with. They gave up 21 points against them, including several big running plays. But the problem with West Springfield is they can put up 35 points on you. And if you get to 35 points, even against Centerville's defense, I think they're still going to be able to put up at least 24. That's a lot of points to score for an offense. It just hasn't done it all season long.
One thing I got to say, and an X factor in this, is new quarterback David Toth from Centerville. He came in against Chantilly, lit up the Chargers. Chantilly fumbled the ball, sure. They turned the ball over, but the Centerville offense scored. They had to score, and they did score. Against Westfield, it's going to be a little harder because Westfield has a great defense. But Toth has an arm, and he can lead this team down the field.
All right, and everyone says Centerville hasn't scored that many points this year, but when you're going up against defenses in the Concord District, it's pretty difficult to score points, and I think we've seen that throughout the season, and some of the best teams in the Concord District have struggled just to score. All right, let's jump into another D6 matchup, this one, the 4-5 matchup. You can't really pick an upset here because they're both so close, but the last time these two teams played, John, it wasn't close.
Yeah, last time these two teams played, Lake Braddock won 41-0, handing West Potomac its second consecutive loss. West Potomac has kind of righted the ship since then. The Wolverines are 7-3 overall, 4-3 in Patriot District play. A little disappointing after starting out the year 5-0. Their PowerPoint rating was 28.4. They've scored 234 points this season versus 165 giving up. They've started to give up more towards the end of the season, though. Player to watch is their quarterback, Cole Walter. He's put up better numbers statistically than Glennon, who was just in studio, which is a little bit surprising. For Lake Braddock, they're the co-Patriot District champions with West Springfield. 8-2 overall, 6-1 in the Patriot District play. 2 losses to Robinson early in the season and to West Springfield. They had a 28.7 PowerPoint rating, just ahead of West Potomac. Scored 284 points, only allowed 111. Very stingy defense for the Bruins. Player to watch there is Shane Halley. He does absolutely everything for the Bruins. He's their quarterback, he's their punter, he's their safety. Every single snap, he will be on that field, BJ.
A quick note about West Potomac. Big man Jimmy Bennett, 6'8", 285, committed to UConn this week on Sunday night. That is a big pickup for the Huskies, who have jumped into a national ranking top 20, the second fastest team ever to do that after spending just 6 years in Division 1A football. So that team obviously on the upswing. Guys, we're staying on the upswing here as we jump into the Division 5 breakdown. We've got some playoff matchups to share with the folks at home. Division 5, we're going to be getting intense with Division 5 next week. But let's show the folks at home the matchups, Paul Frummel.
Well, Lee, happy to make the playoffs, but they have to travel to Ashburn and play Stonebridge in the first round. South Lakes right there going to Madison, Yorktown heading to Edison, and Mountain Vernon heading over to Marshall.
All right. So next week, we're going to be jumping more into the Division 5 playoff race, and we'll be able to break down, as we did with Division 6, we'll be able to break down every Division 5 matchup as we get further in the region tournament. But guys, what we think it's going to be anyway for the Division 5 final is Stonebridge-Madison. So let's break that down as we're a couple of weeks out. Let's break down the Stonebridge-Madison matchup, Paul Frummel. You cover both these teams.
Looking ahead, it's always fun to do. You got Madison here. They were Madison 8-2, 5-2 in the Liberty District. Now their PowerPoint ranking was 29, and points for 281, points against 137. You know, Madison started out so hot, lost to Stonebridge, and then dropped one to Marshall. And I talked to Coach live after the Marshall game, and he told me, I said, did you look past? You were already in the playoffs. Were you looking past Marshall? And obviously, it's Coach Live. He nearly bit my head off saying, Madison never looks past Marshall. Marshall never looks past Madison. You know, stop being an idiot. So I said, all right, fair enough. And you got Stonebridge, guys. You get Stonebridge with Jaron Govea. Now, Jaron was the offensive and defensive player of the year for the Liberty District this year. This guy can do it all. Stonebridge is 9-1, 7-0 in the Liberty District. Their PowerPoint rating is second best in the region, 31.7, just behind Westfield. Points for, they've scored over 400 points, 409 points, and only allowed 124.
But what you see with Stonebridge is a team that's been there before. Madison has been there before too. And unfortunately, when they get there, they always meet each other, guys. In the playoffs, it's always Stonebridge and Madison has always come out on the short end of the stick in that one against the Bulldogs. One thing to note about Madison is they've got 3 guys that have rushed for over 300 yards. Tucker Barstow, one of those guys, and he's gone for over 600 yards. 2 other guys that have been able to add to that for the 3-headed rush attack. And, of course, they've got a quarterback that can actually throw the ball as well.
And Barstow is one of his key receivers. Barstow, it does it all for the Warhawks on offense.
All right, speaking of someone else that does it all for us, Eric Gilmore joining us from the Connection newspapers. Eric's got a report about the National District, all the teams from the National District in the playoffs. Eric Gilmore, take it away.
Yeah, you've got Edison playing Yorktown this week in a rematch of an earlier season game. Edison won 36-0. Ben Barber, as you mentioned before, guys, is the key to the Edison Eagles offense. Normally a receiver and possibly getting some looks as far as recruiting goes with some interest at Virginia Tech among some other schools. But he's the quarterback. He makes things go on the Edison offense. Stephon Johnson on the Edison defense is a linebacker, and Vaughn Lewis called him one of the most talented linebackers he's ever had. That's high praise from a longtime Eagles coach. On the other side, Yorktown coming off an emotional game against Washington and Lee, 13-7 win and winning the Arlington City Championship, which means absolutely nothing. But at the same time, Kyle Toulouse got in the middle of a fight, as did Jared Smith, who's actually suspended for this game. He will serve a 2-game ejection because he threw some punches at a Washington Lee player. Bruce Hansen, I know, has been dealing with this and was not too happy with what his team happened. But at the same time, they did bounce back after giving up a touchdown and actually held on to that game to win against Washington Lee. But going against Edison, I think personally that they're probably going to be way too overmatched, and I think Bruce Hansen knows that. The most intriguing matchup, though, is this Marshall-Madison game, not the Marshall-Madison game, is actually the Marshall-Mount Vernon game. Mount Vernon has won several games in a row. They've won actually 4 of their last 5 after starting the year 1-3. Shaquan Johnson, one of their cornerbacks, has had 5 interceptions, has done exceptionally. They've created 6 interceptions in the first half, or 6 interceptions rather, against Wakefield in a 35-0 blowout there this past week. Mount Vernon is on a roll. Kai Blanco, their senior tight end, helps their offense. Also a defensive end is starting to get some recruiting interest as well. But Brian Green, their junior quarterback, makes things go as far as the offense goes. He's their quarterback. Carlos Wilhoit, Kyle Ricks, also Ronnie Coleman put a very good running game together for Mount Vernon, who actually thought they were going to have a home playoff game. At the same time, Marshall goes and beats Madison in that last game to secure the home playoff game. The first time the Majors have been in the Northern Region playoffs since 2001. Tom Glenn in his 3rd year went 5-5 last season to 6-4 this season. So it's going to be an intriguing matchup. If the Mount Vernon offense can get things going early, I think they could possibly take this game on the road.
You put the camera on him, and my man shines. Wonderful news from Eric Gilmore. Eric Gilmore, Connection Newspapers reporter, is going to be joining us throughout the postseason to spill some knowledge about the D5 playoff scene and about the National District playoffs. Eric has been a fantastic reporter with the Connection Newspapers. Guys, a great pickup for your sports team over there at the newspaper. I'm your host, BJ Kubaroulis, alongside of Paul Frummel and John Marcario, both these guys of the Connection Newspapers, and Dave Bushenfeld on the far end of the Times Papers. Guys, let's jump in and introduce one more member of the Fairfax Sports Network team, and of course, that's our Athlete of the Week. Who is this week's Athlete of the Week, John Marcario?
Athlete of the Week is Meg Faxon, a senior field hockey player at Woodson. She helped guide the Woodson team to the Northern Region Championships. Meg scored the game-winning goal for Woodson in the 17th minute. It was her 16th goal on the season. She has 49 goals for her career at Woodson, a school record. They will be playing Princess Anne tomorrow down there in Virginia Beach. Woodson looking to win their first field hockey title since 2003. Side note, they have made six Northern Region Championship games this decade.
All right, we're not going to steer too far away from the football scene as we are in our football preview blowout. And every week here on the Fairfax Sports Report, we show you our top 10. Us voters from the Fairfax Sports Network vote on the top 10. And it's no surprise that Westfield is still up at the top. They've been a unanimous number one all year, Paul Frummel.
You got Westfield right there, 40 points whole year, number one. Stonebridge there, number two, very deserving, 34 points. Chantilly's right there as well with 32 points. These are obviously the top three teams in the region.
Number 4 is West Springfield with 24 points. Number 5 is Edison with 23 points. BJ, I must have missed the memo that said Stonebridge and Madison will play in the Division 5 title game, as Edison will be in that game. And 6 is Lake Braddock. They had 20 points.
Though they are ahead of Edison in the playoff seedings, Madison is behind them in the top 10 ranking at number 7, and they are followed by Centerville, who is tied for 8th.
You got South County right there, also tied for 8th with those 8 points, and West Potomac rounding out the top 10 with 7 votes.
And when you look at that top 10, guys, Westfield all year has been a unanimous number one. There has not been 1 week, and you see 40 points from the voters, 1 week where they have not had 40 points. And I think that says a lot about Mike Glennon's Bulldogs. They've been a team that has steamrolled. They've done what they're supposed to do. The one thing you've got to worry, though, about that team is, have they seen a true challenge yet? Even though they've played the schedule they're supposed to play, and they have played some challenging teams. Of course, how difficult the Concord District is when you haven't been challenged, when you've never been down in a quarter or down in a game, you go into a state tournament region tournament situation. Does that play to your benefit?
Well, I would say this, that when they lost to Chantilly last year, and you say, yeah, that's last year. Yeah, but they have most of their team back. Most of that team that lost to Chantilly last year is playing right now. They think about it all the time. That's one of their main motivating factors. It's always in the back of their mind, said Coach Verbanek. So yes, they know what it feels like to lose, and they know they don't want to do it again.
Dave, what do you think when you're a team like Westfield that has not been challenged, even though, look, they're just playing the schedule they're supposed to play. No one's knocking that they haven't played anyone. It's just the fact that they're on this level. They're on a level higher than everyone else. And when they get down to a state tournament situation and the level starts to rise a little bit as they see the best teams, does that play to their benefit?
Well, I think they have played some challenging teams. You got to remember, Chantilly, although they've struggled a little bit down the stretch, they're still the defending region champions. And it was a close game. They ended up winning by 12, I believe. But it was a close game almost throughout the whole game. So they have played some tough teams so far. I think they'll be all right.
One thing you have to look at, though, is they're out of district. That's the thing that worries people. It was not very strong. What they need to do, they have been a dominating force in this region. They got to go out like Robinson does, play some out-of-region schools, play the best teams out of their district during their out-of-district schedule to just kind of beef it up a little bit. They're teams they can handle. It's just the out-of-district schedule this year was a little lax.
John, you see, you're smiling over there. Is there something you know that we don't?
It's not. You said you can't. You're given the schedule that you play, but Westfield voted to have Lee, South County, and Woodson on their schedule this year. Let me say that again: Lee, South County, and Woodson. 2 of those teams made the playoffs. Lee was 2-8. South County was 6-4. Woodson was 5-5. The best team in the land should be playing a much more difficult out-of-conference schedule than that. If they haven't been tested, it's their own fault for not going out and seeking a game that's better. I mean, you could say, what advantage is it to them to go out and play a game against a team that could or may not beat them when they are the best? It's test themselves. I mean, if you get a close game come regional playoff time or even state playoff time and you're not tested, That's your own fault for not scheduling a game.
Well, Dave, real quick, one would say, though, just playing in the Concord District, 5-6 games that you win there to be a district champion in the Concord District, you don't really need to schedule anyone else outside of your district to make it a tough schedule.
That's very true, and don't forget that South County was favored to beat them in Week 1 by this
By
guy
one.
right here.
Yeah, that's true. Usually every year you would say yes. They play in the Concord District, so they don't really need to have that hard of an out-of-district schedule. But this year, I mean, maybe a little bit down for the Concord District. You see teams, powerhouses like Oakton, powerhouses like Robinson, kind of limping, and Robinson limping into the playoffs, Oakton not even making it. So you see that the district may have been down.
One thing that I do want to mention, though, before we get into our picks and before we get out of the Division VI race and before we get too far away from the end of the regular season, is that Herndon, a team that lost 43 seniors last year and a coach of, I think he was there for about, 55, 60 years or something. Chuck Knoll, I think, only spent more time with one team than Tommy Meyer did with Herndon. But you look at Herndon, and they just beat Robinson and Oakton back-to-back to finish the season, winning their last 4 out of 5 after starting the season 1-4. I think that says a lot about what Coach Joe Schaefer's been able to do to get those guys to buy in. 43 seniors and a new coach, guys, and they beat 2 powerhouse teams in the Northern region.
Coach Schaefer made a name for himself by going for 2, not trying to tie it, going for 2. I love that call so much, and he has earned my respect for the length I'm here at the Connection and FSN.
And, of course, he's a genius because they made it. Had they missed it, though, I don't know if he'd be your best friend.
I still like the call, though, because you got nothing to lose. Go for that win.
It's a gutsy call. You're not going to make the playoffs. You could play spoiler to a team, and that's exactly what they did. Oakton at 5-5 is sitting home right now, but high hopes for the Cougars next year as they had a very young team, and everyone thinks that Oakton's going to be the team to deal with next year. You know who the team to deal with, though, on the Fairfax Sports Network is? Dave. Yeah, the Buchenfelds. The Buchenfeld Tigers. Let's look at Dave's record. Let's jump right into the graphic here. Dave's the Westfield of this Pick'ems league, guys. Look at him. 17-10. Okay? And he goes 2 out of 3 last week, and still no one can catch him. Definitely not John Marcario's not catching him with 1 win, though John did pick the South County win, even though we all did. And Chantilly, sorry, John, Edison didn't get it. But Dave, tell us your secret, man. What is it that you're doing? Are you just picking everything we don't pick?
You take out the Oakton games that have killed me, and I'd be undefeated right now because every game I picked against Oakton this year, I got wrong.
All 13 of them. No, you see, obviously, Dave's the Westfield. Me and John are the Division V playoffs. It's just we're not quite there, but we're getting there.
I think John's kind of like the Lee. I think you're like a West Potomac, kind of middle of the pack. Could make a name for yourself in the playoffs.
I'd be happy to be West Potomac.
I'm gonna say I'm kind of the Stonebridge right now.
Oh, okay.
Really?
Yeah,
Not really.
give yourself a little too
I'm
much
just
credit.
over 500. You know what? I'm the Marshall of this thing.
Hey,
I'm the small school big heart. All right, that's what I am.
Marshall's also a team. I mean, that's a good team to be right now.
Absolutely, and they're a team that could make some noise in the playoffs. We're going to be doing our own little version of the playoffs starting this week. Let's jump into it. Let's show the folks at home who picked what going into the first week of the playoffs, and we're starting something different. You see the bottom. The upset picks are in blue. We're both picking Mount Vernon, Dave and I, even though I picked Marshall up top, so I'm covering my bases both ways. I'm playing both sides of the stick there. And John seems to think Robinson's going to take out Chantilly, and Paul's, well, that's a good pick. Centerville over West Springfield. A lot of people seem to think that's one that's going to happen.
I'm kind of hedging my bets because I picked Centerville in that game, and I picked Centerville as my upset special. Centerville does win. That's 3 points for old Paul Frummel, and I'm looking good.
All right, 3 out of 4 of us picked Marshall to win, but Dave takes Mount Vernon, so they don't even need to play that game. Mount Vernon will now win that game because Dave picked them. Like Braddock and I, and Paul and John, and no, John took West Potomac. John, tell us why you took West Potomac. It's an interesting pick because Lake Braddock blew them out last time they played.
I think West Potomac is the Detroit Pistons of high school football. They coast during the regular season, but come playoff time, they know what to do. They were hungry from last year. They played better down the stretch, underachieved the middle of the season, righted the ship. I think West Potomac is going to run away with that football game.
Okay, underachieving. Okay, say Lake Braddock underachieves and West Potomac overachieves. It was still a 41 point difference.
Yes.
You can't come back from that. That shows This is a better team,
I-
and now they're going to lose.
I disagree with that. They were coming off a tough loss to West Springfield a week earlier, 38-14, that had snapped their 9-game win streak. I think mentally they were fatigued. People that were at the game said West Potomac looked a little bit slower than Lake Braddock did. West Potomac, you're going to win.
That may,
And I'd like to apologize to West Potomac on behalf of the Fairfax Sports Report because John picked you and you will be losing now. I know how to settle this. Dave, who's going to win the game?
I picked Lake Braddock.
That's who's going to win the game because Dave is 17-10 and the rest of us are just playing for second place.
Well, I will say it's one of the best matchups this week.
It
It's
is.
obviously not going to be a blowout like it was last time, but I still think Lake Braddock comes away with it.
Several of the games in the Northern Region playoffs are rematches, so go back and look at some of the articles on FairfaxSportsNetwork.com. You can also check out some of the stuff at Fairfax Connection and all the Connection newspapers and the Times papers as well, Fairfax County Times. Check out all the news and notes there to read up. Do your research before you start making picks like us guys up here. And I'll tell you who always does his research and comes prepared is Paul Frummel.
I did, actually.
That's right, for the Loudon Report. My man does his research.
Taking a leap of faith there because I actually did do my
From
research.
Sterling to South Riding, from Ashburn to Potomac Falls.
Hey,
it's Paul Frummel.
Brambleton, you got a little, yeah, okay. So guys, what we're going to talk about, the main thing that matters, Broad Run, Parkview, in best game this year, anywhere, both 9-0 teams. And you say, okay, they're both 9-0, they're in the Region 2 playoffs. But the big thing is home field advantage. It's always important to have that home field advantage. Mike Glennon will tell you, anybody will tell you that you have to have that home field advantage. So they're playing this week for the Dulles District Final. Now, a little brief little points, 4 points against Broad Run has scored 291 points and only allowed 84. Now, Parkview, last year's Dulles District champ, has scored 312 points and allowed 139. So you see, these teams are very, very evenly matched. So the Dulles District may be a little down, maybe not as good as these teams are, but still, these are two of the top 2 teams, and they will make a difference in the Region 2 playoffs this year, unlike last year. Another note, I also mentioned, Jaron Gouveia was named the Liberty District Offensive and Defensive Player of the Year. So obviously he's an extremely important factor for the Bulldogs. One more note to say, Loudoun County, Broad Run, take 3. It's the 3rd time these volleyball powerhouses met, and again, Loudoun County won, winning the Dulles District Tournament. Loudoun County, the best team in the state in volleyball. Yes, I said it, Monica Moore. They're the best team in the state, Loudoun County.
All right, that is your Loudon Report. Paul Frummel every week gives you a Loudon Report. You can also catch that on the website at FairfaxSportsNetwork.com. Something else you'll find weekly on the website at FairfaxSportsNetwork.com is Marcario's Madness. And for those of you who don't know, every week John Marcario gives us a little insight as to what's grinding his gears. John, this week you seem to think the playoff expansion is a good idea, but only in hindsight.
At the beginning of the football season, I argued that having a expanded playoff system in both Division and 5-6 football was a bad idea. In hindsight, I should have said it was a bad idea for girls and boys sports, for all sports. Football did something this season that every other sport, from lacrosse to baseball to field hockey, has done. They had an expanded playoffs. Several other sports have teams with losing records that make the playoffs. No one seems to care. This time, though, people noticed about football. An uproar was caused, and divisions among people, Paul and myself included, some said it was a good idea, some said it was a bad idea. But the reality now is football is following what other region sports were just doing. They are just a little late on jumping on the bandwagon. I suppose people think Lee and their 2-8 record would taint football's gold shine that they have for the football standard.
All right, John, you make a good point, but the one thing you have to remember about football and why it is different is because, and I want to say this lightly, but because you don't want to compare high school sports too closely to college or professional sports, but the honest thing to say is that it is the moneymaker. And the reason that an extra round of the playoffs has been added in is to draw in more revenue. For those people that want to see Westfield, go undefeated, to make it all the way to the end of the season with a 15-0 record, and Mike Glennon going to NC State, and all that stuff, you get an extra chance to see them. And the reason that most of this is being done. Not all of it. I believe some of the intentions are pure into giving kids extra chances to play, and some of the smaller teams that don't usually get in the playoffs now get in, so you give them more time to play high school football. I just think there's several reasons for it being done. I think one thing that is a negative, for example, and hopefully none of this will happen, but I think the one big argument that will be made against this playoff expansion, and what I think would be the ultimate downfall of it, is when you have a major star player go into a first round game, a 1 seed go against an 8 seed, and the kid's knee gets blown out in a game that wasn't needed. That was just set up so that a team like a 2-8 Lee can get in and play a couple extra quarters of football, when a team like a Westfield doesn't need that matchup. They don't need to go out there, waste one more week of football. You also get into the thing where it runs into the next athletic season already. Here we are. They're going to be getting ready to do basketball season. They're going to be missing half their kids.
It's a good point, and I've been for it the entire time. I say, give them that extra game. Lee taking on a team like Stonebridge, honestly, it's not going to be close. But why not let those Lancers play another game? I see your point when you say a kid could get hurt, but a lot of things could happen. Right. God forbid, a kid could get hurt doing something else, playing in practice. That is just a risk you take when you play football. And as John mentioned, every other sport does it. So why not give these kids another week, even though when we have an upset, that team that got upset can start talking about, okay, this maybe wasn't a good idea. But right now, it looks like a great idea, especially in Division 6. It looks like a great idea, and I'm excited to watch these games, and I'm sure the kids are excited to play these games.
Looks like a great idea in Division 6. But Dave, John, let's look at Division 5. 2-8 Lee is in the playoffs. 3-7 South Lakes is in the playoffs. I mean,
well, not to put any more pressure on the Lancers, but I have a feeling if they do end up getting blown out like Paul thinks will happen, and if Pierre Williams doesn't end up playing, he's a little banged up, has an injured ankle, they might have a tough time. But if there is a blowout, all the naysayers will just say, I told you so, this was a bad idea, they shouldn't have been here anyway. So if they can keep it close, maybe people will kind of turn around in the other direction.
Mount Vernon Marshall. Those naysayers could be like, Lee, Stonebridge. Hey, enjoy the Mount Vernon Marshall. Enjoy West Potomac Lake Braddock.
You make a good point, because some of the 1-8 games are going to be kind of nasty to watch. I have a feeling that most coaches are going to be playing some of the second-string kids, getting them in there in the second half to get them their opportunity to play in the playoffs. But you make a good point. Mount Vernon Marshall is going to be a dogfight for two teams that haven't seen the playoffs this side of, I couldn't tell you when. It's a great opportunity for the 4-5 games, but I think you find that in any playoff format. I don't know if it's the right message to send to kids and to a team that you've won 2 games and you're getting a postseason reward, John.
Yeah, I mean, we've touched on all the main points. You talk to Tom Verbanek if they happen to lose to South County and Mikey Glennon happens to have a serious knee injury in that game, and ask him how in favor of this whole entire little expanded playoff system he is. I'm not saying that I changed my mind and it's just a great thing in the world. No, it's still a very bad idea. But in retrospect of all the other sports and keeping in line with all the other sports, it's a good idea. If you're going to be consistent, you might as well be consistent with everything. But I just think in Division 5, like you said, 2-8 and 3-7 have no business being in the playoffs. 4-5, that's great. It's going to be a great matchup. But before, the top 4 made it, and you knew you had to do X, Y, and Z to make the playoffs. Well, now you know you just have to do X, Y, and you don't have to worry about Z because you're still going to make the playoffs. That takes a lot away from football. I mean, it's the same thing with college football. A lot of people say, let's have a playoffs. Well, no, you have a 12-week playoff throughout the season. Every single game is a playoff game. High school used to be every single game is a playoff game because you only knew 4 made it. Now you can do well half the season like South County did, and you're in the playoffs.
But you've got to, South County, I don't think you argue against, because South County's a team that I think earned their right to be there because maybe they started off rough, they fixed some things. That's a classic example of a team that earned their right to get there. But you've got some other teams that are kind of sliding in. It's good for them, and you don't want to slight them. You don't want to say, South Lakes shouldn't be there or Lee shouldn't be there, because they're just playing with the rules they were given. And I'm not saying that is their fault. I'm saying this is more of an indictment of the system than it is of those specific teams. All right, let's jump off this. For more about this, go to fairfaxsportsnetwork.com. That's right, we are on the web, www.fairfaxsportsnetwork.com. You're going to find so many new things on our overhauled website, including new stories, places to vote about who will win the game of the week. Leave your comments. We'll read them on the show every single week. You can also email feedback to the guys about their stories and more at fairfaxsportsnetwork.com. Hey, it's the game of the week. It's the region quarterfinal. Fairfax Sports Network will be at West Springfield, where the Wildcats from the Concord District will go play on the turf in the greatest show on turf with Bryn Renner and Brandon Bailey. On Channel 10, Centerville at Chantilly. And we want to thank our teammates, CCI Screen Printing, for all your screen printing needs at 703-978-0257. Guys, we do this every week, and no different this week as we're heading into the playoff race. Starting with you, Dave, and coming on down this way, who will win Division 5 and Division 6, and why?
I don't see anyone stopping Westfield or Stonebridge. They're both far and away better than everybody else, except for maybe Edison, who John's going to pick in Division 5, I know.
In Division 6, it's Westfield. West Springfield may have any chance that they ever played the game on turf. It will never be played on turf. They're not going to have a chance. It's going to be Westfield. And yes, Dave, everybody will see soon enough. Edison in Division 5 clearing away the best talented team with the best
The truth,
skill
right?
players.
Wesley Dole, the truth.
Yes,
the truth.
they are
Edison's
the
the truth. Everybody will see. No, it's Bulldogs.
All right. Stonebridge and Westfield, is that what you're saying?
Yes.
The Bulldog
It's the
connection.
dogs.
I like that. Obviously, I think everyone is in agreement that if Westfield did not win the region title in Division 6 and potentially the state title, it would be an underachieving year with the professional football team that they have there at that school. And for Division 5, I think most people expect Stonebridge to win it. I'm going to stay on that bandwagon for the moment, but don't rule out the Warhawks. They're a team that they've been hungry for quite a long time.
They can get over that. If they can get over that Bulldog hump, yes.
27-7. They lost it once this year already.
All right, join us every week here on the Fairfax Sports Report, here on the Fairfax Sports Network. We want to thank Mike Glennon for coming in and joining us in studio. You'll get a chance later, sometime down the road, to see more of that interview online at fairfaxsportsnetwork.com. Thanks, Craig Sturbutzel, for your wonderful photos. Check those out at fatboyphotos.com. Come on back every week here and join us on the Fairfax Sports Report.